Today is Monday, Parashat Vayishlach. In the parasha of this week, we read about the famous struggle between Yaakov and Esav's angel. But there's a couple of ideas associated with this episode that I'd like to dwell on today. One of them is the fact that Yaakov, according to the way that the Pasuk reads here, and Rashi explains, he went back. The Pasuk says, Vayivater Yaakov levado. Yaakov remained alone. Wait a minute. He had just been with all his family, his wives, his children, a whole entourage. How could it be that Yaakov is alone? Well, as she explains, Shachach pachim ktanim vechaza alehem. He forgot some small jars, very unimportant jars, yet he went back to collect them, and when he went back, he was by himself. Unimportant jars. Why does Yaakov go back? Well, the tzaddikim, the way they earn their living, the way they value everything that Hashem has given them, it's something that has importance, and a person should not be wasteful with whatever Hashem has granted him. Actually, even last week's parasha, when Yaakov says, Lehem le'echol ubeged lilbosh, he makes a statement, if Hashem gives me bread to eat, and beged lilbosh, and clothing to wear. Wait a minute, clothing is for wearing. Why would you need to specify beged lilbosh? Well, in today's society, there is so much wastefulness. Lehem le'echol, bread to eat, clothing to wear. You go sometimes to events, parties, where people have a buffet, a spread that is so much food and so much wastefulness. And people nowadays, many times, buy more and more and more, even though they don't need those extra, whether it's clothing or extra gadgets or extra whatever it is. We live in a society today that is very wasteful, that is not respectful of whatever Hashem has granted us, to not just do away with it and buy just for the purpose of buying, not for any other purpose than just to own more and more and more. Yaakov says, Beged lilbosh, clothing to wear, not just to own, but to wear. And then, in this parasha, these little jars that are left, he values them, he goes back and picks them up, not to be wasteful with whatever Hashem has granted him. Then we see this struggle between Yaakov and Esav's angel. And it lasted the whole night. The angel of Esav hits Yaakov in his sciatic nerve, in a place where the sciatic nerve is, and that's why we do not eat gida nashe in the animal. That's why when we eat an animal that is kosher is eaten, there is a whole back part of the animal. In order to be able to eat it, you have to clean out all the nerves, the sciatic nerve, and all the little dichotomies that they go into. They split up into small little nerves. That's why today, for instance, in the US, most of the kosher butchers don't have the filet mignon, they don't have that part of the animal, because it is so involved and costly to clean up the gida nashe that you have to be also very qualified to do it. There's a lot of relying on the scruples of the person who's cleaning up that gida nashe, that sciatic nerve, and therefore that back part of the animal usually is sold to non-kosher places. But it is possible to eat the back part as long as all that gida nashe is cleaned up. That's where the angel of Esav hit Yaakov, and that's where the area that we have to clean up very well. But why specifically in the yerech, in the thigh of Yaakov, does the angel of Esav hit him? And our Hachamim find in this a very important message. The yerech, the thigh, in Hebrew, in other places in the Torah, indicates the progeny, the descendants of a person. We say Yotzei Yerech Yaakov, the issue of the thigh of Yaakov, meaning the descendants of Yaakov. And if there is one place that is very vulnerable in the Jewish people as a whole, no matter what generation, it's the young children. And Esav, by hitting in that spot in Yaakov physiology, that's the place that is vulnerable. The children, the young ones, they can be influenced by the culture of Esav. They can be impacted much more easier than the older people who have tradition, who have seen previous generations, who have a heritage that is strongly implanted with them, that will be much more difficult to influence than the young children who can be impacted by the culture around them. And that's why, that's the place of vulnerability of Yaakov, and that's where the angel of Esav was able to harm Yaakov, so to speak. And that's one thing that we have to always be careful with, is that our children get the proper education, that we're very careful in terms of what they're exposed to, because that's the influence that Esav was able to do in harming Yaakov, and that's a hint for generations. So the idea from this parasha, these two ideas, one is the idea of not to be wasteful, but to value everything that Hashem has granted us, even the physical, material, whatever He's granted us, that also we have to respect and not be wasteful with it. And the other idea is to be very careful with the education of our children, of the next generation. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.